well, I don't want my nipples because that's a neutral surge. Like, I want to look like a sexless android. I'm like,
That's
that's
not
not trans.
trans. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. And today I have an amazing guest. But first, I want to tell you again to please like, subscribe, do all those awesome things because you're helping build this channel and we can bring these amazing voices that have different opinions. So I appreciate that you see what I'm doing here. So, that being said, I have a trans male today who needs to be anonymous and he will go by unknown for many reasons, such as he feels in danger if he puts himself out there, he gets attacked by the community, he might lose his job, he doesn't want to deal with all the backlash, which says a lot. So that's why it's very important you understand somebody like this, fearful to show their face and speak about how they feel. It's absurd. So let me give you over to Unknown, and you can tell us a little about yourself, my friend. So take it away.
Hello, I'm a trans man from Canada. I'm wearing a mate mask because where I live and the industries I work in, I would lose my job or gonna get blacklisted if my employers or people I work with found out I was even talking to you about these thoughts or my opinions, because I'd be considered kind of like a danger, because now having different thoughts is dangerous. So I have to keep this mask on to keep myself private. I have been I started transitioning around 2022. I've been doing tons of therapy before that. Was on testosterone for a year until I was dealing with some really bad health complications because of it. And because of my health complications and kind of this weird, people too being afraid of being seen as transphobic or this weird trans is amazing, trans is beautiful. My doctors did not want to deal with my complications or anything negative associated with my transition. So I was the doctors kind of refused to help me because they're just like, oh, it's not going well for you, but you're trans, so you can't really stop transitioning. You're probably just non-binary, that's why you're sick, and get over your sickness. Um, so they just kind of just refused to help me because I don't know. It's just like,
Mm.
if it was anything good about my transition, they could talk about it all day. But if anything negative about my transition popped up, they would shut down and they would refuse to help me. So I was dealing
Wow.
with uncontrollable shaking and vomiting. So about a year into my transitioning, my hands, I couldn't stop shaking them like this. Like, it was uncontrollable and I couldn't stop vomiting. So it's not really something you can work through or like go to work and like deal with. I deal with other medical conditions, but those things I can actually work through. This was like, I couldn't do anything with it. And in the beginning, I thought it was like, oh, it's probably just COVID. So I did all the COVID tests, and then I went to my doctors, and they did all the other tests on me because maybe it's like a stomach flu or whatever, a low blood pressure. And then they did all the tests. Everything came back positive, great. So you're amazing. You're super healthy. The only thing that was left on the table that could be causing my symptoms was the testosterone, and they did not want to talk about it. It was like a
Wow.
no. Anything involving testosterone being bad was a no. They refused to talk about it. So I had to kind of be my own doctor and go cold turkey, and because they refused to help me, and that stopped my uncontrollable shaking and vomiting. So it's
So,
it was a mess.
so wow. Wow. How old are you right now, friend?
I'm in
Or,
my
or
early 20s, so
okay, your early 20s. Okay. So you were only 1 year on testosterone and all these weird health problems started happening and the doctors didn't really, you know what I'm going to tell you. The doctors don't really know. And so
they
they
don't
don't
know, and
want to,
it doesn't really seem like they care, to be honest. It's just like,
yeah.
it's that weird, like,
That's
trans is
really a
so
shame.
amazing, and anything bad about it, you just can't speak about because, I don't know, maybe they're afraid of being, like, transphobic or offending me in some way, of like, oh, you have to stop this because it's negatively affecting your body. Even the only real help they gave me, which was not help at all, is when I came in being like, hey, I have all these bad symptoms. What's going on? The only thing they really kept on saying to me constantly was, you're probably non-binary. If you accept that you're non-binary, your symptoms will go away. So that was the only thing they
Wait,
really said to me to help.
wait. Was that a therapist who told you that or was that the actual
That was an
medical doctor?
endocrinologist. That was an endocrinologist and a doctor.
Holy crap. That is bizarre. That is not the
That's
space of
the
a
children's
doctor.
hospital too. So this person that told me, oh, the reason why you're sick and the reason why you can't stop shaking and vomiting is because you're non-binary, and they work at the children's hospital, so they're probably giving the same information to people even younger than me. So that's the reason why I'm talking to you, because I'm like, holy shit, who's these people in
What?
control of like trans people? Like I did all the therapy, I waited years before I transitioned to make sure I'm doing the right decision for me. Now I'm having really bad health complications and they refuse to help me. What about people younger than me or parents that have kids that are sick and they're just like, oh, they just need to accept themselves. That's all, their kid's sick. Oh, you're sick.
That's
Accept
bullshit.
yourself. Yeah,
That's
it's.
bullshit.
I
And
was
it's not actually
so.
not. I'm so sorry, my friend. That is actually bad medical care, first off. Secondly, we know that there are more people out there having the same problems you're having, but nobody wants to talk about it because they feel that if they talk about it, there'll be backlash from the community. As we know, we see that with detransitioners, we see that with people like you, hence why you have to hide your face. So the fact that we're not allowed to talk about the actual cons of testosterone therapy, medicalization, all these things that is so important. Your voice is so important because so other people don't get themselves into this space and they understand the side effects of testosterone. So it's
Mhm.
just absurd that we're not allowed to have this conversation and you get shut down. Then you have a doctor telling you, well, you might be non-binary. That's not the medical doctor's space. That's a psychiatric or a mental
Yeah,
health
it was literally
professional
just to
space.
shut down the conversation of like, I'm really sick. Oh, just accept yourself.
Wow.
And they did not want to talk about anything else. It was just like, you're non-binary, accept yourself, and the symptoms will go away. And I'm like, I can't stop vomiting. I don't think me saying I'm non-binary will stop the vomiting from happening.
So has the
So
vomiting has excuse me, has that all stopped? Has all those side effects after you stop
yeah,
taking
I
the
had to
testosterone
go
stop?
cold turkey on testosterone. I kind of slowly
Mhm.
weaned myself off it and it went cold turkey. And the shaking, the vomiting completely stopped. So it was the testosterone causing it. The worst thing is when I told my doctors because they were refusing to kind of help me, when I said, hey, I'm going to stop testosterone. You kind of not helping me. It's probably what's causing it. If it's not what's causing it, then there's no harm of me stopping testosterone to really get a gauge of like, hey, if I still have the symptoms on testosterone, it might be the testosterone. If I have it off testosterone, it's not testosterone. So I stopped. I went cold turkey. Symptoms went away, and I'm like, well, that just proves to me it was testosterone. And that kind of opened my eyes up to like, what other weird shit did I go through that maybe I not didn't even realize because I was dealing with my own stuff. Or for me too, I did a lot of research before I transitioned. So I knew like all the pros and cons. So I was really well knowledge on it. And now I'm kind of looking back of like when I first got on testosterone, I remember they have to go through a sheet. I don't know if everyone has to go through a sheet. I did this through the children's hospital, so I think the doctors had to go through a sheet with me of like pros and cons. Um, but even I remember that sheet being so kind of misleading of like some things they would not want to talk about or even bring up. Like one thing being atrophy. They refused to bring up atrophy. Um, the only thing they said was, "Oh, you might experience some dryness," and I'm like, and I brought up to my doctors like, "Well, what about atrophy? Because doesn't that happen to most trans men if they're on testosterone for long periods of time?" And the only thing they really had to say about that was like they kind of congratulate me, like, "Oh, you know so much, good for you." And I'm like, well, why aren't you telling me this stuff? Like, why are you like giving me a pat on the back, being like, wow, you're so like knowledgeable? It's like, well, you're the doctors. You're the ones that should be telling me this, not me telling you this. And they kind of treat it as like, it might happen, it might not happen. Don't worry about it. So I'm like, well,
That
it is a
is one of the
it's a
number
big
one
thing.
things that happens to trans men. It is. I get letters constantly about it. In fact, from you as well, I think. And that being said, it's huge in our community, yet nobody's talking about it. And actually can be prevented by just adding the supplement estrogen into your, testosterone regimen. And it's so simple to make sure this doesn't happen. Yet they're doing that stuff. I'm so happy you're here today because I want the world. You're a younger generation. People just think I'm old and I'm mad and I'm, whatever the situation is. But you are
Well, to be honest,
actually a
I'm
young
mad too. I
person.
see all the crazy shit happening, and I see what happened to me, and now it's happening to younger people that are probably doing this because it's kind of cool right now. and they're experiencing all this stuff. So it's like it pisses me off like so much. But I want to get on your
It
stream to talk
should.
about like the medical frame of it and when I went through as just a trans guy. I don't regret what I did. It's just like I regret the service I got because it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really service. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, here's hormones. This is what it might cause, what it might not cause. We're gonna dilute it so it's like meaningless. And when you're sick, we're just gonna say you're non-binary and you should get over it because you're trans. And it's like
That
that's
is the
not
most absurd
that's
thing. I'm in shock right now because first off, so you have to understand you're going to the doctor. Well, you do, but everyone else, you are trusting a doctor. We trust doctors with our lives on some level, and when a doctor is coming to this without the knowledge of understanding long-term use of testosterone, we're not playing with injection of water. We're putting a substance that is foreign to our bodies, and we're going to
mhm.
reject it. It's all kinds of things are going to happen there. So it's so unethical on so many levels for these doctors to just play with you because they're playing with you. They're not in any way giving you the service you
Basically.
deserve as a trans person and as a human being. You deserve better service. And this is a joke. This is actual joke healthcare. So tell me now, you're one or so years off of testosterone now.
I'm probably around like 2 years off testosterone right now. I'm just kind of taking a break. I
Mm-hmm.
had such bad symptoms on testosterone, so it's like, should I go back on? Should I not get back on? It goes in between. I want to and I don't want to, and also like all the things I've experienced and what I see happening around me with the trans community and so many young, like especially I don't really see it on the trans women side, but the trans man side, I see so many young girls suddenly like one day being like, I'm a trans man now, and it's like it's so out of nowhere where it's like one day they were
Yeah.
the most feminine girl alive, no problem showing their cleavage and just like being super feminine, wearing dresses and skirts all the time, and then suddenly it's like I want to be a man. It's like, are you sure? Like I don't want to be a dick, but it's like
Well, no, you're
what
not. You're
happened?
actually, yeah, no, you're not. You're actually saying things that are already being said out here, and that we all see that this rapid, onset of gender dysphoria or this rapid desire to become trans when that never was there. And
Yeah, and especially.
again, I will always
Mhm.
say this: if you're an adult, you're making those choices. You go right ahead. But we're talking about young people who don't
Well,
necessarily know how to make
to be honest, I
choices.
even kind of feel bad for like young adults because I've talked
Yeah,
to a
I know.
few people who are young adults that
Yeah,
go on testosterone and later
yeah,
on they're like, I didn't realize my voice would get deeper. I didn't realize I was going to grow body hair. And it's like, well, that's the first
yeah,
thing that happens when you go on testosterone. Like, I know so many
yeah.
young girls in their 20s that just like suddenly, like, super feminine one day, next day they want to be a trans man. They get on testosterone immediately, and then they're like, oh, now my voice is deep. I didn't want that. No one told me my voice is going to get deep. And I'm like, who's your doctor? Like,
Yeah, and
or like,
what does that
who
even mean?
prescribed
What
it?
So tell me, what does that even mean to be trans now? So what does that mean when a young person who has no diagnosis of gender dysphoria diagnoses themselves as trans, decides to use testosterone? But what does that mean? That what I don't even understand how we got here. How people can just
I
take
I don't
testosterone
understand it
without.
either. I think it's just the goalpost of what trans was is constantly
Mm,
shifting and moving. Of like
mm.
back in your day, it was probably this is what trans is, and now it's like the umbrella term where it's everything's trans. Like I've talked to a
But
few
why?
girls who identify as non-binary, and this was I asked them a few years ago because I didn't understand non-binary. For me, I thought it was always like a fashion thing, like oh you're like
Mm,
androgynous, but you want a different word for androgynous, so you're non-binary. And then later on, I found
mm,
like, oh, it's a gender identity. I don't really understand it. I know a few people that identify as it. I'm just gonna ask them, just being like, hey, as a trans man, what does that mean to you? I don't want to be offensive, just curious. And basically, what I got from them was it means that they don't enjoy having a period and they don't want to be sexualized by gross men. And I'm like, well, that's kind of like sexist. Like, women are not like sexual objects to men. And I don't think any woman loves her period. It's just a thing that women have to go through. So it's like a weird thing of just like, if you don't fall into
wow.
stereotypes, or if you're not like a 1960s housewife or like Kim Kardashian, it's like you're
Mm,
trans.
mm, mm.
Or you don't love your period as a girl, then you're probably transgender. I even know one a
Wow.
girl that's got a full on hysterectomy, no questions asked, because she just asked told her doctor like hey, I don't like having a period and pregnancy scare me. I'm trans, and they're like, okay, we'll send you to a what what's you called
To have a hysterectomy, yeah,
but
yeah,
what do you
like
call the
a
doctors that deal with
gynecologist,
like the female high
Gy-
gynecologist? They're like, oh, just
gynecologist,
send you
yeah.
to a gynecologist. They'll check you out, and then they'll give you the okay to get surgery. And I'm like, and she's really proud of it. Like she tells the like she's told
How
like
old?
all like so many people about it. And I'm like that's not safe. Like that's like I know you're happy about it, but God, that's kind of scary, right? You can just go to a doctor, just be like, as a woman, especially she's a bit autistic too. I don't mean as an insult. She
No.
is autistic, and just be like, hey, I don't like periods. I pregnancy scare me. Can I get a hysterectomy? And the doctor's like, yeah, sure, you should get therapy beforehand, but now we'll just send you to the gynecologist and we'll get that all set up for you.
How old? How old is this person?
I
Do you know,
think
like
maybe
age?
mid 20s. So old enough where it's kind of like you
Wow.
should know what you're doing, but also they seem very kind of childlike. I don't mean that as an insult, but they're very
Yeah. No,
immature
I
kind
don't
of
think you're
person.
insulting. I don't think you're insulting anybody. You're just having your own opinion about something. That to see how this is how we become. We're too scared to even say anything because somebody's gonna get insulted. That's just how it is,
Oh yeah,
dude.
of
You
course.
cannot stop
Everyone's
speaking
insulted by
about
everything
things.
nowadays.
Yeah, you
Yeah, but I
can't.
know
You
some
cannot. You,
Yeah, but I know some women with actual medical health problems where it's like they want a hysterectomy for like their medical issues, and doctors like, no, 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 no. But if you just say like, oh, I don't like periods and I'm
yeah.
trans, it's like hysterectomy, here you go, no problem, no questions asked. So it's
So
scary
what
up here in
happens?
Canada, or yeah,
What
or
happens
even like
when this
top surgery.
person?
Like I got, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Hold on one sec. Let me just. No, no, no. It's okay. What happens when? What happens when a person does this at an early age and in 2 or 5 years from now decides that they made a huge mistake and they just tell you that the doctor never pushed back on them? They just get, what happens, do you think?
Well, there is no pushback. It's just like you say you're trans and you're trans. It's a affirmative therapy. Even I've had that with some of my therapists where I kind of like bring up or like even I look back to when I was in therapy, it seemed like most of the pushback I put on myself or my family put on me. And it wasn't really doctors pushing it back against if I was trans or not. It was really me and my family because I didn't want to be trans. I don't think any of us want to be trans. It's kind of like I was born biologically female. There's nothing wrong with being biological female, but I have these intense emotions and feelings that make me feel so sick, and I want to get rid of those feelings, but I don't know where those feelings are caused from. So it's like, am I just dealing with some internalized homophobia? Am I dealing with some internalized misogyny? What's going on with me? I don't want to be trans, but I might be trans, and I want to figure this out. So yeah, I look back and I'm like,
Yeah,
God, I
yeah,
the system I didn't really have. Well, there's no system anymore, so I had to make my own system. Like I did gender therapy in probably 2015, 16. I got a full diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Then I waited 4 years to just make sure to kind of like that awkward stage of like, okay, I got the diagnosis. Now I'm going to slowly kind of introduce myself as male or like try to live as male or man as possible to see how I feel about that. And then after those 4 years of living that way, everything's going good. Of like, this feels more right. I'm going to go back to the same gender therapist to get another diagnosis of gender dysphoria just to make sure it hasn't like dissipated or grown or whatever. I'm just like, I need to just double check again. And then I waited a year after my second diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and then I started transitioning. So for me, I had like a
mm,
big section of my life and time of therapy, living as a male, seeing how that feels, going to therapy again, waiting, transitioning. A lot of people nowadays don't have a system. It's just like, you want hormones? Here's hormones. You say you're trans? You are trans. You don't like your period? Well, that's a sign you're either non binary trans. Do you want a hysterectomy? It's like, it goes to such extremes and it's so odd. Or even with like top surgery, I got keyhole surgery. So I was very lucky. My surgery turned it out real well. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so there's always going to be some things where you're like, oh, I wish that was a little different or whatever. But I was very lucky. But I remember after getting my surgery, I had to go back to my surgeon just to get a checkup. And I'm kind of an awkward person where I don't like to be sitting in silence with someone. So I was kind of just like, started having a conversation of like, oh, how's life been? Like, you must be busy or whatever. I don't know what I said. And my surgeon replied to me, he's like, yeah, I've been really busy. I've done 50 top surgeries this month. And I was just sitting there like, 50? Like
Wait,
50?
wait. 50.
50
Five
in one
zero.
month. 1 month, 50 top surgeries. And that's
I'm
one surgeon.
speechless.
There's
I'm
probably,
speechless.
I think there's around like 6 surgeons in my, or maybe even 10 surgeons now in my vicinity. Like, there's tons of, like, everyone's a trans surgeon nowadays. But, like, hearing that, like, 50 top surgeries in 1 month, it kind of made me, it horrified me. I'm like, oh my God, I let this guy do surgery on me? And he's probably just doing surgery on anybody if he's doing
So
50 a month.
let
It's,
me let me ask you this. Did let me ask you this. Did is that the same? So the same amount of top surgery, which is huge, happening, and this is in Canada, so it probably gets paid for. But I also want to know, what about hysterectomies? Did you get a hysterectomy, and do you notice that a lot of these people are actually getting hysterectomies?
I have no idea. I don't know the scale of how many people are getting hysterectomies, but to be honest, it's probably
Okay.
well, probably less than top surgery, but probably still way too many. Because if you can just go to your doctor and say, "Hey, I don't like my period," and the doctor's like, "Well, are you trans?" Or like, "Oh, I have gender dysphoria regarding my period," and they just be like, "Oh yeah, just go to the gynecologist, let them know, and they'll give you like a little sign up sheet, basically." Or
Wow.
like all the surgeries, it's like no questions asked. Everything's paid for here in Canada, and it's like that's another thing of like, why are taxpayers paying for this? Like, I can understand
Yeah.
of like if you went through a system and you like, I got a diagnosis, I've waited years, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, it's actually a medical condition for me, then it should be paid for. But if you're just someone like 5 months ago, you're just like,
Well, here,
I'm trans now,
right.
pay for everything.
So here's what I'm gonna say. Yes, I agree. It's great if you got a diagnosis, you went through a system. It is awesome that the government can pay for these things. You know, that's happening here in the states. Thank God, because it needs to be done. It's a medical condition that needs to be repaired through medical set. But the problem I have is now we have these self ID people who just say they're trans, walk in, get top surgery, and then eventually many of them, and you can't push back on me on this because we see a large amount of detransition. So now on how I look at that is, I'm sad for those people, but they took space. They took space from an actual trans person who actually really needed these surgeries, who can't get these surgeries because there are 87,000 in line. And now we have people who are getting these surgeries who don't need these surgeries, who are being told they need these surgeries, when in fact they clearly don't need them and they should have never had them. That's what people need to see. And now there's people waiting in line for those surgeries who actually medically need those surgeries, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And even the surgeries are getting weird now. Like, you bring up like people just getting their nipples cut off, and I'm like, what? Like, as a trans man, it's like nipples are important. Like, I want my
Well,
nipples.
those aren't trans.
I'm speaking for myself
Yeah,
because I just want to look like a
those are
regular
different.
dude. But I see a
That's
lot
right.
of
That's
like
right.
that getting paid for as well, of people being like, I like there's so many different labels for trans because trans means everything, but being like, I'm like non-binary surgeries or like gender fluid or gender queer and all those different labels. It's like, well, I don't want my nipples because that's a neutral surge. Like, I want to look like a sexless android. I'm like, well,
That's
that's
not
not trans.
trans.
And why is that
Okay,
being put in?
hold on. Yeah, that's not trans, my friend. That is something else. And that's what people need to see. We want our nipples as transsexual. We want to look like men. We want to be forward. That's called body modification. And I actually find it very insulting that that's put into the transsexual space. We are completely different than that, and I don't want to be involved in that. That has nothing to do with me. I want my nipples, and I want to look like a man on some level. So let me ask you this real quick here. I also want you now to start talking about community. How has community treated you? What do you see in the community that makes you have to be here with me publicly in a mask, not using your name, not saying who you are? You had to be in complete hiding. Tell me why this is happening to you and why you feel so unsafe on some level.
Well, for me, I was never like I'm trans, but I never was part of the trans community, if that makes sense. I was just like I deal with a medical
Mm-hmm.
disorder. I don't really need to hang out with people that are also dealing with the same medical disorder. And even to be honest, when there were like
Yeah.
trans groups, I always thought they were kind of creepy because it's just a bunch of people like telling each other how beautiful and amazing they are, and it's like I don't need that. I don't need that weirdness. But I work in a lot of spaces. One of my jobs, I started working there probably like more than a not like 8 years, 8 to 6 years. I've been working in this business, and when I first started working there, I was like one of three trans people that work there, and now it's 75% of all the people I work with are now trans.
What?
So
What?
it's
What?
and they're that weird kind of trans where it's like everything's kind of offensive to them. They don't they semi want to transition, but they don't want to transition. Everything has to be their way. The world has to see them how they want to be
Yeah.
seen, but they don't really want to do anything about it. They 1 second their name's Susan, and the next day their name's Timothy, and then from Timothy they become Sebastian the next day. So they're either changing their names or constantly changing their identities or their pronouns. Where it's like it's like so wishy washy with them. There's always some weird identity thing where they're not just trans. They have to be a trans, queer, non-binary, fairy, femme presenting, disabled,
Mm-hmm.
uh, body positive queer activist. They have to have the 15 different labels. So,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of spaces I work in, there's a lot of those kinds of people. And like, even people saying, like, oh, well, you need dysphoria to be trans, that's considered a huge offense. And even like someone asking a question or being kind of confused of like, oh, why is this going on, is seen as kind of offensive to them. It's like I shouldn't educate you. Like, how dare
Oh
you,
yeah.
you cis het people wanting us to educate you on our experience and blah blah blah. It's it's very kind of toxic and weird of like I remember when people would ask me what's going on in my head, or like, why do you identify this way? Or even in the beginning of my transition, or even before I started transitioning, I felt kind of there's a lot of people that are like, there's something off about you. What's going on? Like, what are you? And I would have no problem asking them if they were respectful about it, like, oh, I deal with a medical issue. It's not a big thing. But for them, it's like it's their entire identity. Like being trans is not an identity choice for me, or not a thing I be like, look how trans I am. I'm trans. It's like I just want to be a dude. I don't want to be this trans. And even now, trans has been kind of
Well,
I see with a lot of girls,
yeah.
they just do not want to be straight white girls. They want to have something attached
Uh,
to it, because usually those are the people that are identifying as trans. They're usually either just white, they're straight, and they just don't want to be that. And I think that's another thing of the toxicity, not just in the trans community, but the crazy LGBT community plus 2IA PQY community is just like cis het people are gross and they're oppressors and they're evil and they're trying to ruin the world and we've been oppressed, and like that weird victim complex where I see a lot of young people that never had gender dysphoria are now sound like, oh, I'm the most dysphoric person in the entire world. Like, but it's like for the smallest things, like, oh, I don't love having a period. Now I'm super dysphoric. So like no one enjoys having a period. It's like, oh, I don't want to be groped by creepy men. Well, that's no one wants to be groped by creepy men. That's not just like a trans experience. That's just a no one likes to be grossly sexualized by people. So that doesn't make you trans.
Fascinating. That's
And it's the
fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me that so many young, especially girls, are looking at the world this way. It's so sad and wrong. They are looking at the world, what you just said, that they're being sexualized, that they don't like their periods. That is really very, very, very sad to me, and also it is actually destroying the way girls and women are seeing themselves. They're seeing themselves as victims, they're seeing themselves as weaker, they're seeing them that we're not on some level saying, wait a minute here, it's actually empowering to get your period, or it's empowering to grow breasts. And it doesn't mean you need to be sexualized, and you're not, what does that even mean? But they're actually being taught this. So I see what you're saying. You're equating that to the reason why a lot of these young people are saying I'm trans, because they don't want to have any of that stuff come to them. So they think by transitioning, none of this stuff will happen to them, which is clearly wrong. And that's why, again, I think a lot of the detransitioners say that. So wow, this is such great, knowledgeable stuff from your perspective. I really appreciate it. So one of the last things I want to ask you here is, what do you think as a young person that we can do? Because I do think we should separate transsexual people who've medical conditions, who have gender dysphoria, who want to go through the system, who want to live in the binary space. I think we need to be completely separated from this new generation of trans people. So do you see that that's a possibility in the future, or do you see that the trans activists will get really pissed off if we sort of remove ourselves from this new trans activism?
They're always going to be pissed off. That's one thing about trans activists. They're always going to be pissed off, no matter what we do. I feel like we should definitely separate ourselves of like this kind of more like it's fun to be trans, it's beautiful to be trans, it's amazing to be trans, and then people with just a medical condition that are just like, we're kind of just, we're stuck in this space. It's not like it's an amazing, beautiful thing for us. We're just kind of stuck here. Another thing I feel like we should do is just teach younger girls that it's okay to be a girl. Like no girl likes her period. No girl likes to be sexualized. Just because you are a girl doesn't mean you have to follow stereotypes. And if you don't follow stereotypes, it doesn't mean you're like a third gender. Because a lot of these new trans guys, it's not that they want to be seen as guys or males. They just do not want to be seen as girls, which I find is very interesting. It's kind of like they
Yeah,
just don't want to be women. It's not the fact that they don't want
yeah,
they want to be men. They just don't
yeah.
want to be
Wow.
women. Or even like with the new kind of non-binary movement, it's mostly young girls that are in this non-binary space, and it's they look like girls, they act like girls. Not saying that girls and women act a certain way, but they just yeah, it's just very odd and kind of sad because it's like I wish I didn't have gender dysphoria and I could just
Yeah,
live happily as a girl. But ever
yeah,
since I was like 5 years old, I had very intense gender dysphoria, even though I didn't have the words to describe it.
yeah.
Like even as a young little girl, I remember I tried to change my genitals with a pair of pliers because my brain, even though I didn't know that like what male and female biology was, I had this deep sense of like something's wrong down there and I need to fix it. Like that's something that's been with me since my entire life. And now I see this new movement where it's like, and especially now where it's like they kind of seem proud of it. Like, oh, when I was a kid and when I was a teenager, or when I was a young adult, I never had gender dysphoria. And now suddenly I have tons of gender dysphoria. And it's like, that's not really how it works.
Mm-mm,
Or
mm-mm.
even one thing I've been seeing a lot of, I don't know how to describe it, but regarding the surgeries or this trans space, I've been seeing these. I'm just gonna call them titty funerals because that's I don't. That's the only way I can describe them. If is young girls taking pictures of like their naked body, their breasts, and like selling pictures of their breasts or like showing off, like get a look at these before they're gone. It's like the weird, creepiest thing, and it's like it's. I don't think we were like older trans people were like, hey, check out my boobs because I'm gonna cut them off in a few days.
Mm-mm.
But that's a huge thing that's happening now. I see it all over like social media. It just like pops up, and I'm like, ew. Like I don't want to be like not ew for the person, but just like this is a surgery. Like this
Well,
is
it's a
something
it's a bad
serious.
it's a bad, we're sending a very bad message to the world. First off, I don't even have a picture, I don't think, of my breasts before. I hated them so much I just couldn't even to look at them or talk, like, ew. So that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me that they would take pictures, post them. That's not dysphoria, because dysphoria, you would never be able to show the world your breasts. And
Yeah, or
that
even like
dysphoria,
I know there's some trans men that for educational purposes, like this is what it looked like before and after and stuff like that.
that's
But that's more
different.
than a medical lens. Like these are
That's right.
full on like check them out because they're gonna get cut off, and it's
Wow.
like ooh, or like I've seen a lot of young girls like they just turned like 20 and they're like I'm gonna start an OnlyFans and just sell pictures of my naked body because in a few years I'm this is all gonna be gone, and I'm like ooh,
Oh
like that's I feel so bad for these because even though they're adults now, they're still young. Or
they
even I
are.
see a lot in the trans male community, like the newer trans male community. There's this weird fixation on like or fetishization of gay men. Like I see so many young girls that want to be gay men, or they have this a vision of what gay men is of like oh this strong top and this super submissive bottom, and like oh it's so romantic and like weird like fetishy thing, or like oh I want to be a boy but I want to look exactly like a girl, and it's like weird. It's
Yeah.
like fetishy of a gay man of like oh submissive gay men look exactly like women and I want to be that, and it's like that's offensive just to gay men.
On some level,
Like
that's
on
fetishizing gay men. And all I used to ever hear when I did my adult work was, you're fetishizing trans men. Now they're literally doing that in a way that they used to attack me for it. So that it's
yeah,
all over the place. It is literally all
it's
over the place.
everywhere, and there's
Yep.
some just yeah, it's if oh you like pants more than dresses, that's a sign that you're trans. Oh, you don't like your period, that's a sign that you're trans. Oh, you don't want to be like sexually harassed, that's a sign that you're trans. Like everything is a sign that you're trans now. Like, oh, you feel uncomfortable, it's probably because you're trans. Oh, you don't like your body, it's because you're trans. And
So
I feel like the talk of like even body dysmorphia is just like just put underneath the rug of just like trans,
yep,
because
that's
women
right.
have a lot of beauty spec. What's the word I'm looking? Female beauty standards are very high for a lot of young
Yes.
women. When they look at
Yes.
magazines and they see like some girl with a
Yes.
big boobs and a big butt and a small waist and beautiful makeup and lovely hair, and they're looking at that and it's like I can never be that. And now there's
It's
this weird
gender.
movement of like, oh, if you feel that way, it might be a sign that you're trans, and it's like,
Wow, that's just shocking me. I mean, I know this, but when I hear it from you in that from that generation, it just blows my mind. It's been
yeah,
appropriated. Transgender and transsexual has been appropriated, and now
it's
anyone
a
could just
fashion
be.
statement. It's
Yep,
I
yep,
feel like you or Blair said something like this, like it's the new emo, it's the new goth, it's the new
yep.
punk.
That's
You
right.
know, back
That's
then
right.
there was a lot of people that weren't punks, but they loved the style of punk and they would dress like punks, but they weren't in the punk movement. That's kind of like the same thing with trans now, but of course it's now with surgeries and hormones, and now like we're all one and we're all like on different spectrums. I'm a fairy boy that wants to be a girl but it wants to be seen as a man, or like it's like weird like brain science. Like I've met so many weird people where it's like I want to be seen as a man, but I want to be seen as a man that dresses like a girl, but still but is
My God,
like
that
a
would give me
woman, but
such
a
that
man,
would
but a they
that
them.
that would give me such insane dysphoria. I would freak out if I I don't get it. I just don't. Not, and honestly, I know I sound like I'm being judgmental. I don't get it. And I don't understand how I'm put in the same space as these people. They are completely different than me and you. Oh gosh, my friend. So here. So I really appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot. I appreciate you stepping up to the plate and having this conversation. It feels very sad to me that you have to be anonymous. I hate it so much, but I think eventually you will take that mask off, and eventually you'll be able to stand and say, "This is what I believe in." But I understand the dangers of doing that, and it just means a lot to me, and it means to a lot of other people out there. Trust me, a lot of people will hear your voice right now and understand, wow, the fact that a young person has to be in hiding in order to say what they see going wrong because their own experiences, you're talking about your own, is so insane in itself. And that this is how the trans community is, everyone out there. there. This is how the trans community is. They will attack you if you do not belong to their narrative. That's what I want the world to see. We are not allowed to have these opposing opinions, or else we're transphobic, and we're literally trans people. So thank you, my friend. I really appreciate the interview, and I'm gonna probably get a lot of asks to bring you back on because your voice is so powerful. So thanks everybody. Like, subscribe, do all those awesome things for me. I really appreciate you pumping me up and making me powerful in this space. And have an awesome day.